always from the heart of the city, and now on demand 24/7 on the CHFI website. This is the soundtrack to accompany a few moments of grace. And I'm Don Jackson, around the world on the internet. Writer Anne Lamott said, and I quote, "I do not at all understand the mystery of grace, only that it meets us where we are, but does not leave us where it found us." The words of Anne Lamott. It's a new year, time for a moment of grace. With Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Anna Nalick and Breathe, 2 a.m. Sarah McLachlan, Full of Grace and Snow Patrol and Chasing Cars. Happy New Year from Lovers and Other Strangers. I'm Don Jackson. I know it's been a while, and I thank you for your patience during this brief hiatus from daily uploads. I hope you had a wonderful holiday season. This program is our first for 2010. Over the holidays, I bought a lovely little book called Tea Light Moments for a Woman's Soul by Hope Lida, and published by Harvest House Publishers in Eugene, Oregon. Her last name is spelled Lyda, and I hope I've pronounced it correctly. This would make a great book to read at the start of a new year. I'd like to feature a few thoughts from it this hour. In a chapter called New Directions, Hope writes, and I quote, "I saw a young boy pacing in front of a driveway while he waited impatiently for his parents to finish talking with friends. The last time I saw pacing was in a 1950s comedy where the husband robotically walked the width of a maternity ward hallway. The thing about walking back and forth is that you don't get anywhere, no matter how many times you do it. Just ask the boy," unquote. I smiled when I read this short passage in her book. When my son is ready to head to a hockey practice or a game, he paces back and forth behind our big SUV, waiting patiently for my wife and I to help him get his equipment into the trunk. The only difference between my son and the one the author saw pacing in his driveway is the fact that my son's pacing is useful. My son's pacing acts like a stimulus to get him into a frame of mind for his sport. He mentally pictures the game in his mind's eye and different plays in front of his net. It is a way for him to focus on his role as goaltender. If you find yourself pacing with no purpose in mind, consider what Hope also wrote in this short chapter called New Directions. And again I quote, "When we are going nowhere, God's grace changes that. He does not leave us where He finds us. He gives us a new direction and the hope of healing. And He sets us in motion, going forward toward a future." Unquote. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Shaye and Happy Baby and Carly Simon, A Little Anticipation. And Happy New Year from Lovers and Other Strangers. Again, the book is called Tea Light Moments for a Woman's Soul by Hope Lida, and published by Harvest House Publishers in Eugene, Oregon. Hope writes, and again I quote, "Sins and lies and unhealthy relationships box us in. And when we try to correct these on our own with human solutions, we're usually just building a slightly bigger box around the old one. She goes on to write, I plan to discover what it feels like to be unburdened. I plan to live in grace. Unquote. A moment of grace this hour with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Leona Lewis, Happy. Celine Dion with The Color of My Love, and Beyonce with one of the biggest songs of last year, 2009. And of course, Halo. And Happy New Year from Lovers and Other Strangers. I'm Don Jackson. Again, this author writes, and I quote, a friend and I contemplated what life would be like if we rarely experienced failure or circumstances that knocked us over. We wouldn't rely on God's mercy and power. We wouldn't know the wonder of grace or gratitude. And we wouldn't have the sweet assurance that when life is hard, we haven't fallen from grace. We're being carried by it. Unquote. The actress Mary Pickford once said, this thing we call failure is not the falling down, but the staying down. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Jacksoul, going back along that stretch of Lonesome Highway, and Kelly Rowland picking up the pieces in the song Unity. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers. The poet Edwin Markham wrote, I dare not ask your very all, I only ask a part. Bring me, when dancers leave the hall, your aching heart. Give other friends your lighted face, the laughter of the years. I come to crave a greater grace. Bring me your tears. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Christina Aguilera and Hurt. And Blue Rodeo remembering 5 days in May. My wish for you is for all the best in 2010. From Lovers and Other Strangers, I'm Don Jackson. One final thought from the book Tea Light Moments for a Woman's Soul, published by Harvest House Publishers in Eugene, Oregon. Hope writes, and again I quote, we always need grace. But when we turn to its power with desperation and heart, our view tends to have shifted from the known to the unknown. We don't recognize the path, and there is little comfort found as we maneuver the unfamiliar. But there is grace. In times of sickness, healing rises. In seasons of despair, hope emerges. In days of fear, peace materializes. In moments of doubt, faith appears. She goes on to write, and again I quote, be thankful to have your eyes open to the landscape of grace. It is as vast as the unknown. But in a life dependent on God, it becomes as familiar as the terrain of our own hearts. Unquote. This hour, a moment of grace with lovers and other strangers. Good night, sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.